This is the SALVANT report. Thank you for the benefits of your time. You are on your favorite show, the SALVANT report. And we have a lot of things going on around the world now. And today we're going to talk about a looming nuclear crisis in the Gulf, which will be the result of the war between US and Israel and Iran, or Iran, and a war where we found out that this administration, the American administration, has done more damage to US reputation, credibility, and power than what Xi Jinping of China or Vladimir Putin of Russia have done for the past 30 years. In the 1950s and 60s, world leaders expected countries to build nuclear weapons as they acquire the technical capability to do so. President Kennedy predicted that there would be 25 to 30 nuclear armed states by the 1970s, which led him to promote one of the boldest initiatives of American foreign policy. Today, 185 states have signed the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, or NPT, forswearing nuclear weapons. Remarkably, only 9 countries have nuclear weapons. And what we'll be talking about, the worldwide deployment of nuclear weapons, will tell you really the 9 countries plus 5, and we talked to you about the other 5, and the reason we add the expert from Routledge, Taylor and Francis group, from the bulletin of the atomic scientists, document that we have consulted, report that we have reviewed, talking about the nuclear weapons around the world. First, we have the US. While the numbers are not really accurate as we go forward, but they said that the US has a stockpile of approximately 3,700 warheads. It's really an unchanged estimate from the previous year, which was, we were talking about 2024. Then we have Russia. Russia has, since that the first nuclear country, Russia has approximately 4,380 nuclear warheads. Then the third country is China. China, according to the report, according to Routledge, Taylor and Francis group, that was published in the bulletin of the atomic scientists, they said China has 600 nuclear warheads. 600. North Korea, according to the same report and research, has 90 nuclear warheads. India has a stockpile while he continues to modernize his nuclear arsenal. They said India had between 130 and 210 nuclear warheads. But luckily, has produced only around 172. The other country, which is a state nuclear power, is Pakistan. Pakistan, according to the same report that we have reviewed and consulted, has in 1987, since 1987, the report has examined Pakistan nuclear arsenal, which estimate to currently include approximately 170 warheads, and which could realistically grow to around 200 by 2027 at this current growth rate. Then came the French nuclear weapons. According to Hans Christensen, Matt Korda, Eliana Jones, and Mackenzie Nightball from the Bulletin of the Atomic Scientists, which this guy provided this estimate, they found out that France has a stockpile warhead deployed and operationally available for deployment on short notice. And they have 290 of this warhead ready for delivery by ballistic missile submarine. In addition, they have LE warheads and the older TN-75 warheads, which assumed to have been recently removed from Le Vigilant submarine. Then we have, after France, we have United Kingdom. What about United Kingdom? How many warheads, nuclear warheads, do they have? According to the report, they say for decades, the United Kingdom has maintained a stockpile of approximately 225 nuclear warheads. And this is up to 120 of which are available for delivery by 4 Vanguard class nuclear powered ballistic missile submarines. We have the Israeli nuclear weapons, and that's the time we have to ask the US hypocrisy about Israel nuclear weapon to stop. Benjamin Netanyahu is fighting, and we're going to make sure that Iran doesn't have any nuclear weapons. But with the US hypocrisy, nobody has ever publicly talked about Israeli nuclear weapons. And according to the same report, they said Israel has a stockpile of close to 100 to 300 nuclear warheads. And we said that at this moment because Benjamin Netanyahu has asked or has instructed the American president to attack Iran, because they said they don't want Iran to get his hand to the nuclear weapons. But the US, via his hypocrisy, never mentioned that Israel is a nation full of nuclear weapons. And for your information, the Israeli nuclear weapons program dates back to the mid-1950s, when the country's first Prime Minister, David Ben-Gurion, began to explore a nuclear insurance plan in order to offset the combined conventional superiority of Israel's neighboring Arab states. As historian Avner Cohen writes, Ben-Gurion's determination to launch the nuclear project was the result of strategic intuition and obsessive fears, not of a well thought out plan. He chose Shimon Peres. Under Peres' stewardship, Israel purchased a substantial package, including a research reactor and plutonium separation technology from France in 1957. This is a substantial package: a research reactor and plutonium separation technology, as well as, we're talking about 1957, as well as 20 tons of heavy water from Norway in 1959. The ground for the Negev Nuclear Research Center was broken near Dimona in early 1958. You heard about Dimona during that war when Israel instructed America to attack Iran, not because of the nuclear weapon, it's just because that's the only country that is in face with Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, who want to put the hegemony, the Jewish hegemony, down there. That for Israel to be the only one dictating the rules down there. And during the war, we have seen that Iran has sent some ballistic missile close to that site in Dimona. So when you're hearing the war, because Benjamin Netanyahu for the past 40 years, or 30, he said 40, but we said 30 because in 1996 that he started saying that Iran is 2 weeks away from getting the nuclear weapon. 30 years. That 2 weeks never come. And he decided, even he has between almost 300 nuclear warheads, to decide that there is no way Iran is going to acquire the nuclear weapons. And that the war right now, it's not for that. No regime change and all the objective of the American administration, they didn't meet any of the objective. Regime change, nuclear weapons, and all that nonsense. It's the only thing is just to do everything humanly possible to weaken Iran, because that's the only country who said no to the US and Israel. And no, Israel, you're not going to think that in this area you're going to be the one to dictate what the country around is supposed to do. That's what we call hegemony. The greater Israel. And the only obstacle to that is Iran. We must destroy Iran. That's the goal and the objective of Israel, not the US. Benjamin Netanyahu decided in February 28 to attack Iran and giving the order to the American president, hey, we're going to do that. And you are aware of all that, the strategic humiliation, by Iran to the two most powerful countries, the two most dangerous countries in the world, to the US and Israel. Why did we come about that title as it relates to the looming nuclear crisis in the Gulf? It's just because since its announcement on July 22nd, the US-Saudi nuclear agreement has alarmed non-proliferation experts. The 30-year deal would open the way for US companies to develop the kingdom's nuclear infrastructure, but it could also allow Saudi Arabia to pursue nuclear enrichment on its own soil. Although the agreement is still under congressional reviews, he has already created fears that it will weaken the US gold standard. Which one? Is the strict requirement Washington holds nuclear partners to, and thus encourage other Middle Eastern states to demand similar capabilities. Adding to the uncertainties, the US president declared a day after the announcement that the terms of the deal were totally subject to Saudi Arabia normalizing relations with Israel by joining the Abraham Accords, and insisted that there will be no enrichment. Again, you can see everything is for the protection of Israel. They said this is subject to, totally. What could you be making and signing an agreement with a country, and then later on he said, well, if it doesn't normalize relation with Israel, nothing's going to happen. So what? You don't force a country to normalize a relation with another country. But it is Israel. Neither of these conditions that I just talked about, totally subject to Saudi Arabia normalizing relation with Israel, and also no enrichment, neither of these conditions was apparently in the original announcement. Nowhere to be found. He went to sleep, changed his mind, and added those things that were not part of the agreement. Meanwhile, reports of confidential side letters to the deal have raised additional questions. Without knowing their contents, we are not aware of them, we couldn't get access to them to read them. It is impossible to assess the agreement's true implication. Saudi Arabia will advance along the nuclear path, but how its pursuit of nuclear power can be managed without igniting a nuclear arm race. That's the problem. Regardless of what conditions are present in this agreement the 30-year deal with Saudi Arabia. The deal makes one thing absolutely clear. The central question is no longer whether Saudi Arabia will advance along the nuclear path, but how its pursuit of nuclear power can be managed without igniting a nuclear arm race. What about the other country in the Gulf? Are they going to do the thing? Same thing. And there is something going on in all the capitals around the world, that if Iran has the nuclear weapons, there is no way the US and Israel would attack Iran. It would dare them to attack and they would not, because they know what will happen. And that's the reason why every country now is going to fight to have the nuclear weapons, because it's a deterrence for not being attacked. And we have, as an example, North Korea. Saudi Arabia, it's already in the final stages of completing an Argentine design low power research reactor. And he has reportedly received bids from China's National Nuclear Corporation. Saudi Arabia has received bids from France's EDF. Saudi Arabia has received bids from Russia's Rosatom, that's the company, and also from South Korea's Korea Electric Power Corporation, in order for them to build 2 nuclear power plants. Do you see where this is going? Although the kingdom has deliberately delayed making a final decision on those bids while negotiating with the US, Saudi officials are determined to go ahead with their nuclear program as soon as possible. Is it a message that Saudi Arabia is sending to the US? I cannot rely on you for protection. You there in the Gulf, and my country is getting beat up with a lot of ballistic missiles from Iran. Now, this need not end in crisis. Rather than helping Riyadh, that's the capital of Saudi Arabia, rather than helping Riyadh make enrichment a national project and allow it go it alone on a nuclear power, this American administration has another better option. And this is what it is. The US should build a regional uranium enrichment framework through the establishment of a regional nuclear fuel bank on Saudi soil. Not only would such a mechanism reduce the risk of proliferation, it would also offer significant geopolitical and economic advantages both to the US and to the region. If Washington fails to explore this alternative, it could find itself facilitating the emergence of multiple national enrichment programs across the Middle East, driving a regional nuclear competition that will be far more difficult to contain than is to prevent. More difficult to contain than is to prevent. We can have, and Saudi Arabia can have power, the Middle East state can have power without proliferation. And one way to satisfy Riyadh's request for nuclear power that avoids most of this risk is to establish a regional nuclear full bank on Saudi soil. Such a project could be led by the US and will be owned and managed by the IAEA. It will be assigned to serve all Middle Eastern states that are party to the the nuclear non-proliferation treaty regime, or NPT. And there is already a successful example of such a facility. It's located in Kazakhstan, a full bank controlled by the IAEA, supplies low enriched uranium for civilian use. Before we close, let's talk about the advantages of this fuel bank. A regional fuel bank offers many advantages. For Saudi Arabia, hosting the bank on its own soil could bring it the international prestige it craves, but in a multilateral framework. It would also curb the appetite of states such as Egypt, Turkey, and the UAE, which is United Arab Emirates, for independent nuclear development, thereby lowering the danger of a nuclear arms race in the Middle East. At the same time, just for the US, such a framework will deepen US oversight of Saudi nuclear activities and help block potential Chinese penetration into this sector. A better way out of the current situation is to reframe enrichment not as a national right, but as a regional, internationally controlled service. Internationally controlled service. Such an approach will transform nuclear enrichment from a concession into a conditional reward. It will align American non-proliferation interests with Israeli security concerns and give Saudi Arabia a clear strategic choice: nuclear legitimacy and international status in exchange for transparency, restraint, and regional integration. If Saudi Arabia were to accept a regional fuel bank in lieu of a sovereign enrichment capability, that arrangement need not to be conditioned on immediate normalization with Israel. Instead, it will become part of a broader phased regional process in which progress on civilian nuclear cooperation, regional security, and normalization reinforce one another over time. In the larger strategic picture, non-proliferation is more important than normalization. Thank you for your time. That was the SALVANT report. Until next time.